This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Now, Irene, before we launch today's conversation on whether Black people should trust medical trials, I want to take a moment to thank each of our listeners for their amazing support, their encouragement, and the feedback, especially regarding episode 4 on grieving during a twindemic. Irene, do you have a tsunami?
I sure do. A tsunami of thanks to our listeners, and also for your shout outs on Twitter as well as emails. And listen, with the emails, there were a tsunami of them that I write dissertation length emails. So I'm getting to each and every one of you. By the end of this week, you will hear from me. So thank you so very much for tuning in.
We also want to give a phenomenal shout out to our amazing producers, Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, Irene, earlier in September, a joint letter by the presidents of 2 historically Black colleges and universities, Walter M. Kimbrough, representing Dillard University, and C. Reynolds Verrett, representing Xavier University of Louisiana, received attention as they announced their decision to participate in phase 3 of the Ochsner Medical Systems vaccine trial. Now, the Ochsner study is sponsored by Pfizer Incorporated and BioNTech SE. Now, Irene, what do you think, and are you signing up for it?
Well, let me just say, do a disclosure here, which might be an embarrassment. So my physician, my physician too, but my spouse is a physician. And she has to convince me every year to take a flu shot. So you kind of know my sort of trepidation about shots in general. But let's say this here. This is what I'm sort of in a moral conundrum. This is the issue here. As we speak today, Emmett, we got 207,000 people who have died from this virus. Of those 207,000, Black and brown people have died disproportionately. And the reasons why we have died disproportionately is, I can think of at least 3 reasons. Health disparities. Overwhelmingly, we are frontline workers. And then there's just that history of distrust. So I will go get my flu shot. I won't be signing up right yet for this COVID number, but I will definitely give the flu shot a moment.
So the COVID, as it's being called, has encouraged you to now get your flu shot, where in years past you wouldn't get your flu shot. So you're about 1 shot behind, I see. I'm kind of right there with you. I traveled last year to the continent and had to take a number of shots in order to get my certification to be able to travel out of the country into the continent. And one of those shots was a flu shot. And I said, okay, I got it this year. I'll be okay. So I'm going to definitely get a flu shot this year. But I am not feeling this vaccine. And I'm certainly not feeling kind of the guinea pig phase of signing up to be, in the trials. So, what do we do? Because we do know that these vaccines, if they're not tried out on Black and brown people, then they may not work with our physical chemistry, and so we have to do something there.
Yeah, I agree with you. But let me just tell you this now. I'm not even running for the flu shot, but I'm gonna go, okay? Because I'm worried now, okay, that I'll go for the flu shot and they're gonna trick me.
Oh, Lord.
And give me, okay, so that's to just show you.
Oh, Lord.
Where that's exactly what my spouse said. She said, girl, okay, but let me say this here. This is why I'm in this sort of conundrum here. Not only the data that I just gave you, but the point is we do need a diversity of samples, all right? So the conventional samples have always been originally a white male.
Mm-hmm.
Then when they wanted to diversify it and add a little gender in there, they then did white women. But the thing is that we need to know how COVID works with some of the comorbidities that is very prevalent in our community, like obesity, hypertension, uh, um, other things. But my point about that is that we also need to look at other things that we have particular to us. One is sickle cell anemia. How might this vaccine work with folks who have sickle cell anemia? How does it work? My friend, as a matter of fact, my very good friend, her daughter has lupus, and as you well know, and many of our listeners know, that Black and brown women, disproportionately have a higher incident of lupus. And then, listen, if you're pregnant, and listen, we have problems just having a normal pregnancy, and we know that the maternity rate is very, very high. So when I think about all of that, I get worried. But let me tell you the dilemma I'm in. Okay. Even if it wasn't affixed to, the two HBCUs, first of all, I mean, we had this discussion. Emmett, you said you don't think you would feel comfortable with your sons, sort of in that quandary, because the question it raises for me is that if this is presented to students, one of the things is, well, how will that be doled out? If I say no, will my scholarship money be lessened? Will it be an incentive to get more money? If I say yes, I just would want my child to just go to school and be the knucklehead that you are, okay? And in between that, get a little bit of education and don't cost me too much money. I mean, I'm in that space. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't want them to be clouded in
Yeah.
that sort of conundrum, thinking that you're helping me by putting yourself in that studies and saving me $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah, there's a power dynamic here, and you're absolutely right here, because once the college president says, "Hey, I'm doing this. Who's with me?" I mean, it's very difficult to be like, "Nah, man, later on that." So, and I personally, you're so right, Irene. When we first learned about this, I was like, "Look, not my sons, right?" Because we know what has happened in the past in terms of ethical violations and the mistrust. I mean, you mentioned it in going to get your flu shot and potentially leaving with something extra. I mean, we understand about the Tuskegee syphilis experiment and study, which was
Mhm.
conducted between 1932 and 1972,
So that's
and we
39 years.
that's
That
39 years.
And you know what bothers me about that? I mean, not only the unethicalness of it, it was at an HBCU. See, that's
Yeah,
number one.
yeah.
That's number one. And then number two, so when we look at 1933, okay, you say, okay, we're in the Depression era. Maybe some of these people volunteered. This is before the information was disclosed. And I'm thinking, okay, some of the people perhaps volunteered for a loaf of bread. Okay, because we are in Depression. We are also in Jim Crow America. So it troubles me about the checks and balances, not only in Jim Crow America, because by the time you get to 72, we out of the civil rights movement, right? So there shouldn't be this kind of Jim Crow, medicine. But I was just astonished and
Well,
appalled.
yeah. I mean, you have a 40-year period from
Yeah.
1932 to 1972. And in 1932, when it started, there were 600 impoverished sharecroppers who were utilized, right? And 399 of them were infected and never told.
That's
And we
right.
know that syphilis not only can lead to death, but leads to blindness, heart disease, mental illness, and a whole host of other infirmities. And we know that even by 1947, penicillin, which became the cure for syphilis,
Okay.
was there,
Okay.
but they didn't tell these black men. So how many
Right.
black men died? How many of their wives and or significant others? How many of their children who were born with
That's
syphilis, right?
right. That's
And it
right. That's
only
right.
ended because of a leak to the press in 1972.
Right. And the thing that bothers me about this, so there's this kind of what I call historical, not only memory and history, but the historical DNA. How because it's passed down generationally. So my point is that, the effects of that doesn't just stay confined within the body of that particular person, but also his lineage, the entire community. So, it concerns me. And I was so glad to hear that you and other Black ministers, at least did a yellow light. Like, wait a minute now, hold up now. Let's think about that. And I think the easy way into us doing this is because it is an HBCU. But the thing with the HBCU, and I got to be careful about that, because one of our producers and my spouse almost went to one. But it's like, we understand, listen, we understand this. Pre-COVID, okay, they're on a shoestring budget. And now COVID, I know that they're struggling real hard to keep the doors of their institutions open. And God knows we don't know what any institution is going to be like, of higher learning after COVID. So it's too entangled for me, Emmett. It's just too entangled for me.
Entanglement, oh my goodness, entanglement and the COVID and the vaccine. Lord Jesus, we have gone to a whole new height. You heard it here from Irene Monroe: entanglement, the COVID, and
Mhm.
the vaccine. I mean, but you make a great point here about these HBCUs, and again, I would send my child to get a top shelf education, but I'm not sending my child to be a guinea pig.
That's right.
Right? I mean, now, if the presidents want to do that, God bless them. If the faculty want to do that, God bless them. If the staff want to do that, God
Go
bless them.
ahead. That's right.
But
That's right.
leave the students alone.
Yeah, and I don't trust it. Let me tell you why. Because even though one of the presidents, and he's the president of Dillard, I think, President Kimbrough, he's in the study. But my point is if it's a double blind study. You don't know who's getting the placebo and who's actually getting the virus. But I would think that I don't trust that, because I keep thinking you probably know who's getting what. And I think that if you give him the placebo, just let me do this, and nothing happens, it would encourage more people to certainly think about doing it. Listen, we should think about doing it because it's about our humanity. It's about that we shouldn't let a past historical trauma, which has been since we've been here, shape or distort or truncate the possibility of a future, of not only future generations in terms of better health, but our own present better health.
Well, yeah, I mean, we should think about it. We should think about it. But I'm kind of with you and what you said before, in terms of the entanglement, right? The COVID, can't trust it, right? The vaccine, I can't trust it, right? Some
No,
of
I
these
can,
medical.
but Emmett, I can trust the COVID because it's gonna kill you. See, that I trust.
Oh
Okay,
Jesus!
it's gonna kill you. Okay, now it's the people.
Oh
Okay,
my
okay,
goodness!
inviting me to be part of the test that I'm worried about. I know the outcome with COVID. Okay, unadulterated.
Listen, Reverend Irene Monroe, you got me on the floor. I need a break. I'm just calling for a break right now because you are too much. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and we'll be right back.
Now, you don't know if you got the vaccine or the placebo, but either way, you're helping to find a cure.
Either way, it's a really important role to have and to be a part of that research. And I never thought that I'd do something like this.
You are the first person in the United States to get a shot in a phase 3 COVID trial. What does that feel like?
It is very exciting. I'm very anxious about it. I just hope that they're really good results. I know a lot of people are doing a lot of different vaccine trials and things are going on, but number one, I feel so proud.
You're listening to the All Rev'd Up podcast. That was a segment of Savannah, Georgia news anchor Don Baker, who was the first person to receive the phase 3 vaccine trial in this nation. Amazing. An African-American journalist who was covering the story, but also becomes now part of the story. This is actually phenomenal. Here, I want to give her major applause for her courage. It wouldn't be me. Let me be clear about that. But I'm grateful for her courage and what she is doing for not only humanity, but for folks, because of the reasons that you mentioned, Reverend Monroe, that you mentioned that if we don't have Black folks and brown folks who sign up here, that this vaccine may only be formulated for white folks.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I congratulate her. Absolutely. And I'm praying every day that, sister, you don't wake up dead. I just wanted to get up every morning. Because she says right now she's feeling good, and that her arm isn't as heavy, as when she take a flu vaccine here. So I'm really happy for her. But the big part that I'm happy for is that I think we need to, those who want to do it, we do it out of a sense of consent. And what has happened is that a lot of times things happen to us medically and it's not out of consent. Like we know of the Tuskegee study, and you're going to talk more about, Henrietta Lacks, but, civil rights activist Fannie Lou Hamer, who many of
Yeah.
us know her words, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. She had some pain, look, back pain, and they sterilized her.
Yeah,
And
they did.
I remember back in the day when they were perfecting birth control pills. They went up in the Bronx with Lincoln Hospital, and this is a fact. And that what they cajole these women on two things: shame them because it was like, well, why are you having all of these babies? And number two, some of them were getting public assistance, and it's like in order to continue with public assistance, they would acquiesce to be part of this experiment. But I'm hearing similar things about women on the border. Some of these Mexican women who are crossing the border, they're talking about, they had some problems. They didn't, but they leave and they've had a hysterectomy. And this is a real serious issue for me because the father of gynecology is Marion Sims, and what he did, of course, without consent, he used slave women without anesthesia.
Yeah.
And what is it? Come on, help me with the word.
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia.
Anesthesia. You
And
got it.
yeah,
Yeah.
anesthesia, because I get so animated and so passionate about my reproductive organs. Okay, anesthesia. That that's how he perfected. The good thing that happened with this is that not only do we honor those women, but Central Park, this is in New York City, finally took his statue down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you just laid it out. I just want to add the notion of Loretta Pleasant, who we know as Henrietta Lacks, right? Born 1920, she passed away in 1951. She was sick with cervical cancer, and she was a patient at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Maryland. And in 1951, while she was receiving treatment, some cells from a biopsy were taken without her permission, and they were used to create the first immortalized human cell line, which is a very important discovery, but it was without her permission. And think about this. This woman died and was buried in an unmarked grave, and her
Mhm.
grave was not adorned with a headstone until 2010.
That's
That's 10
right.
years ago.
That's right. And you know what bothered me about this? So the woman who wrote the book, Rebecca Sklotes, or however you
Mhm.
pronounce her name here. So this was an award-winning book because I know all of us would like say what. And at first we were praising this woman because the book is The Immortal Life of
Mhm.
Henrietta Lacks and stuff, and it stayed on the bestseller list for like 2 years. That's how important this book was. Henrietta, Lacks, her cells were the first to go in space and see how they work with zero, gravity. They were used to study leukemia, AIDS virus, cancer, and a number of things. So I thought she was righting a wrong, but she monetized this moment in this way
Mhm.
because the family didn't know about the book, the
Yep.
family didn't know about the movie.
Yep.
Now, if they got money from it, we got money from it, and the thing that got me the most, Johns Hopkins, where all this experiment was taking place, got no money.
Irene, say that title again because I just want to be able to hear that the title of the book is what?
The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks.
Now, the reason I had you repeat that was because earlier in the first part before the break, you were talking about entanglement. And here we are again. Write a book about it, can't trust them. Right?
Uh-huh.
Sell your sales, can't trust them. Right? I mean, give your syphilis, can't trust them. So
Hmm.
what are we going to do here? I mean, because we need to have samples that reflect the chemistry
Of
makeup
us.
of us, but can't trust them.
Right. And of us as human beings, not as guinea pigs. Okay. And
Oh.
so that's the thing here. But let me tell you how I flipped a little bit. So this is the conundrum that I'm in here. Okay, because when they first came out, now if you remember, when they first came out about COVID-19, there was this huge lie that we as Black people, there was racial immunity because we were Black. Okay, do you remember that, Emmett?
Yeah,
That racial immunity, and the reason for that is because largely because we weren't in the data. It
yeah.
really was this. But let me tell you what flips me a little bit, not much, but Idris Elba.
Mm.
Idris, that hunk got COVID. Now come on now. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if you're straight or gay. We sisters don't
Mm-hmm.
want that brother gone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? We don't want him gone. And so what troubled me about it is that there are two things that it made me think about it. Because what happened is Tom Hanks got it and his wife, you go like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
their DNA and all that is in the study. Now I want Idris Elba to live. If you get it, or any of our friends and loved ones, or we don't know, I want us to be in that data pool. But let me tell you something that I did learn. I learned this from the AIDS epidemic. The reason why the AIDS epidemic was disproportionately high among Black gay men and women was because, number one, there were no advertisement and information about it, and so much so that it didn't hit our neighborhoods. And so what happened was, it was this belief that AIDS was a white gay man's disease. And so what we knew, us sisters, long before, the CDC said that the face of the epidemic would be that of a heterosexual sister. Listen, our sister friends were dying. I was funeralizing a couple of my good friends. So all I'm saying is that I think the best outcome of this is information. Now, Moderna, as you know, is here, Emmett. It's here in Cambridge, the headquarters. And last September 4th, they had some participants, and out of that participant, they had 16% that were Black and 10% that were Hispanic. They're trying to get more. I'm just concerned about how they're getting folks, because they come with our kind of trepidation and fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, are they doing financial incentives to get
Mm-hmm.
folks? All I want is this. This is what I pray for. I want consent the same way as that newscaster in Savannah, Georgia, Dawn Baker. She chose to do it.
Yeah.
I want us to choose to do it, have all the information why we're doing it, and then feel that we did it, and feel okay about what the outcome actually is. But I love what you said about you wouldn't want your son, to consent, and yeah, you got to recognize the power differential in that. So all I want is, give me the information and let me make the decision for myself.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, if we're given our Christmas wish list, I want this thing to just go away. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
because we have over 1 million dead around the world,
Yeah, we
and
do.
we're, as you already mentioned, 200,000 plus here in the United States gone. And this is just, it needs to stop.
Yeah,
And,
it does.
if it's about us wearing masks and physically distancing and being responsible in terms of, how we socialize and whatnot, I just pray that people will actually listen and
Hmm.
stop doing the things that jeopardize one another's, because when folks do that, that's not asking for consent. And
No,
so
no.
I'm prayerful that we can move forward. But let me give a final word here. Let me give a final word, because we're talking about the notion of really Black agency again, right? We've
Hmm.
had an
Hmm.
episode on earlier, and I want to talk about the responsibility of telling the truth. So, beloved, when we talk about Black people, let's talk about Black people and not simply Black bodies. Let's not depersonalize and take life out of people. When we talk about Black anger, let's understand that Black anger does not equate to Black hate. When we talk about Black peaceful protesters, that does not equate to rioters. Let's tell the truth. We are not dealing with a race issue. We're dealing with racism and white supremacy. Words matter. How we describe people matters. How we narrate people's experiences matter. How we talk about people's feelings matter. Getting consent matters. So with all that having been said, let's press in to our hope and not succumb to our fear. Let's press in and continue to be resilient and not restless. And let's have courage to do what needs to be done in this season rather than to be silent and to sit on the sidelines. So let's stand in our truth and you be unapologetically you. Amen?
Right. Amen.
And Ashe.
Ashe. I loved it.
All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music for this episode is brought to you by Reverend Price's son, musical prodigy Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Nina Perzuki, Chelsea Mers, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
Feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment to allrev'duppod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of All Rev'd Up.